Good morning, good evening, everyone who is joining us today for this wonderful session. We're just going to give everyone a minute or two to join. While we do so, please be aware that you're muted, and we will unmute ourselves from the speaker side whenever we're going to be talking. Maybe just to start very briefly with a quick introduction, I'm Anna Stanley-Radière. I'm a Director of Climate Transparency at WBCSD, where I co-lead the climate work. WBCSD, if you don't know what that is a business NGO bringing together businesses to work on sustainability topics together, really focused on collaboration around the themes of climate, nature, and equity. And thank you so much for joining us today. We're very excited. We have a very, very packed agenda, and we'll be kicking off in a second. While you wait, just very briefly, if you have questions, burning questions which come up during the course of this event, we have a chat function on the right-hand side of the little window that you'll be seeing. And please type in your questions throughout the whole time. We have some time for Q&A in between, and also at the end, we'll make sure to get to some of the questions. Those questions that, of course, remain unanswered, we'll try to follow up with. So please, be active on the chat. It's always great to have all your participation, and thank you so much for joining us today. It's a great pleasure to be hosting the launch of the PCF Guideline event, which was launched by, the guideline which was launched by Together for Sustainability not so long ago. So maybe without sort of further ado, I'd like to start by giving the word to Bertrand Conqueret, the President for Together for Sustainability and the Chief Procurement Officer at Henkel, who will share some introductory words with us today. So Bertrand, over to you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Dear guests, host, panelists, and attendees, a very warm welcome. This is really an amazing day. It's a day that the TfS community has been working towards for more than 2 years. And thank you very much to all of you who join us today. We are more than 1,300 participants together in this virtual room. And today we did not only register for this event, but we joined because we all have a shared interest in the challenge that we put on stage and deliver an answer to the question how to tackle the Scope 3 agenda in the chemical industry. And I'm very happy to welcome our Master of Ceremony, Anna, the Director of Climate Action at the World Business for Sustainable Development. Anna, thank you so much for being with us today. And also thanks a lot to WBCSD for co-hosting this event. And a very warm welcome also to our panelists from TfS members, but suppliers also. And let me invite you to a journey now. We are not on 9th of November 2022, but on 9th of November 2030. This is the signature of the new year of the Paris Agreement. And we are meeting again in this room. And let's imagine that we are now in a world with substantially less greenhouse gas emissions. A world with data transparency, allowing to drive our respective businesses and shared Scope 3 agenda. A world where businesses and suppliers are innovating and designing while reducing emissions. A world with educated people, teams, customers, and consumers who at a touch of a button can see how much carbon emission they have reduced, but also how much they have caused and what is in the design. So how does that sound to all of us? Is it utopia? It is not. We are here. And we are here because we are deeply committed. And we are deeply committed with that step we are managing today, which will make it really reality. It is our conviction at Together for Sustainability. We met yesterday at Together for Sustainability, and we reinforced together all that commitment. For those of you who knows TfS for longer, it is eventually not a surprise that we are coming with this carbon footprint initiative. So TfS is built on a very strong belief in the power of collaboration, of partnership, and continuous improvement to advance sustainability in the global chemical supply chains, because it is the only way to make a considerable sustainability impact, pooling ideas, joining forces, and fostering trustful cooperation and engagement between team members and partners. So as you just said also, Anna, 1.5 months ago, TfS launched the PCF guideline for the chemical materials. We were so proud and happy to be there and to go live, because this will enable suppliers and corporations to calculate, and from next year onward, to share high quality carbon footprint data, and the work can start. So today we are very excited. I am excited to announce that we are launching this product calculation guideline, but this one is even more stronger than the one we announced 1 month and a half ago, because it is also covering corporate accounting. The full open source PCF guideline will allow us and new suppliers and stakeholders of the chemical industry to calculate the PCFs and corporate scope 3.1 of the greenhouse gas emissions. So this guideline will become a vital instrument for working together on real and meaningful emission reduction to help to finally decarbonize the entire industry together. So it took more than 2 years, as I said, to come to that point. And this development has involved the enormous and tireless commitment of many of our members, of all company members, of all experts of our companies. And together, let's today celebrate that moment of that incredible work that you guys in TfS, you have done. TfS team, you are just amazing. Thank you so much. As collaboration is key, we did not want it to have that PCF guideline just for us, but to have a solution for the industry, to propose it to the industry. But we teamed up with you, Anna, with the WBCSD team to ensure that this PCF guideline will be aligned with a more generic cross-industry pact, the Pathfinder framework developed and launched by the WBCSD earlier this year. So the PCF guideline is designed as a drop-in solution to the pact, ensuring an easy and wide uptake by a variety of business sectors producing chemical materials. So we, the TfS team, we are currently now working very hard to finalize an IT solution, a platform, a digital platform that will enable corporations and suppliers to share upstream PCFs. And this will make it easier for businesses to conduct the cross-industry comparisons and to combine and to manage their emissions across all our 3 scopes. So our challenge for the future is not to engage together, that's what we kick off today, to upskill as many companies and suppliers as possible, and to enable all of us to use the TCF PCF guidelines and to work on that CO2 reduction. So I invite today all of us, all of you, on that journey, because the material is now available to engage in it and to learn this new language. So before I hand over to you back, Anna, let's make all together in this room to have a joint commitment. In 2030, we meet again. In 2030, let's ensure that when we meet, we can celebrate, and that we have many more peers and colleagues that we have invited, because then we can really look at each other and say simply, we have made it and we are ready for the next decade. Thank you very, very much. And I hand over to you back, Anna. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bertrand, for these very, I guess, inspiring, words. I mean, taking us on that journey. I really, truly believe we can get there, and the role that Together for Sustainability and the chemical sector plays is enormous. I want to sort of take a little bit of a quick step back and reflect a little bit on these last few days. I'm currently in Egypt at the COP, and one of the things I'm finding really interesting is this new focus on the Scope 3 challenge. It really is popping up everywhere, and there are so many sessions you sort of have to miss half of them, and I'm quite sad to have to miss some of them, and I know it's a luxury problem. But what's really nice to see is this focus on taking real action and really making progress on solving this Scope 3, but also in particular the product level challenge. So thank you so much for those opening words, because I think they really highlight where this journey can go, and also some of the themes around collaboration that are really big in the partnership that we have between PACT and the WBCSD initiative called PACT and Together for Sustainability. So I think, as I said, the chemical industry has an enormous role to play in making progress in this space. And today's session is sort of a clear sign of the progress that is already being made by the chemical industry. Why is that important? Well, I think all of you know that the chemical industry has a significant share of global greenhouse gas emissions. 7%. That's a big dial to move if you can reduce it. And 77% of these 7% are Scope 3 emissions. So there's a real potential for making an impact. And hearing all the climate scientists here at COP talking about the crisis that's happening and the need for action, I think there's a real opportunity here to, as a sector, make a real difference. And some of the things that are really coming through in these sessions, apart from the fact that obviously Scope 3 is on the agenda everywhere, is the need for really granular transparency, the need and the kind of opportunity that innovation and data exchange and technology present in this space, and time again, the collaboration aspect. As I said, there are many sessions happening. Well, that also means there are many people working on this topic. And that's sort of something that I find really encouraging, but I also find quite worrying in a way, because it means that there's a real risk for many different competing solutions and approaches being developed. So what we've done at WBCSD under the Partnership for Carbon Transparency, we're trying to bring together all the different players that are working in this space to solve this challenge, to really, as you so nicely put it, make sure the click down on an industry works with other industries, because no industry exists in isolation. There's a sort of connection between every single industry. Now, I don't have to tell you where chemicals go. We know chemicals go everywhere, but there are other industries that are also doing work, and there's standard setting bodies, and there are many people in this ecosystem really trying to drive forward the agenda. So what we set out with PACT is to really help and make sure that agenda is aligned, and the collaboration with TfS is a really good first sign in that direction. We're really pleased by the depth of alignment we've managed to achieve. And maybe sort of to give you an idea of what that means in practice, it means that we align on methodology. You briefly spoke about the Pathfinder framework, and we really have tried to make sure that this industry agnostic guidance for product carbon footprinting that we've developed back on the back of the Greenhouse Gas Protocol that we are a co-convener of, and other existing standards in this space, for example, the European Product Environmental Footprint, that the sort of industry click down really aligns and works with that. There's a lot of hard work that's gone into sort of alignment there, and I think some of the team are on the panel here today, and I think they can attest to the hard work it was, but it's such an important bit of work. And I think the other side that you mentioned is the data exchange side, and the importance of making sure that data exchange tools which are being put in place for specific industry contexts work with other industry data platforms, work with individual solutions, and even work with organizations implementing their own tools. And again, there are some people on the call here today who are already starting to implement tech solutions into their own systems to be able to exchange that data in the value chain. So those are sort of some of the very specific aspects or points where we've been collaborating very closely together for sustainability. And also from our side, thank you so much for being so progressive and showing this leadership in this space, because it's really been excellent to see that come together. And today's session sort of just, yes, it's a high point in sort of the culmination of a lot of work. We're still at the beginning of the journey, but I think the signs, looking at that 2030 vision are really promising. So thank you very much on behalf of WBCSD, but also on behalf of all the PACT members that have worked very closely together with some of the TfS members here on the call today. So maybe sort of to baseline us for today's session, I really want to use the session today to give everyone an opportunity to understand in depth what the guidance does, the guidance that do, but also understand how you sort of move towards action and implementation. So not just reading and saying, this is great, but what can you as an organization do to yourself start calculating and collecting that data, working with your suppliers, what is needed beyond calculations to really create that engagement across supply chains so that collectively as an industry you can move forward. And in order to do that today, we've got two parts to this session. So after the sort of brief introduction, we're going to be focusing on a first part, which is about what is the PCF guideline, helping you understand in details, and getting some of the members who are really involved in drafting the guidelines, getting them involved and sort of sharing that information with you. And hopefully, as I said, I'm already seeing there's questions coming in. Please continue to ask questions. You have the experts here. This is the opportunity. And then the second part will be focusing more on the action implementation aspects. And to really get into the depth here, I'm really excited to be joined by an excellent panel from across the Together for Sustainability membership, from different parts of the supply chain, which I think is quite an important discussion to have, sort of reflecting these different aspects and different challenges. So with me today here is Professor Dr. Peter Zeiling, Director of Sustainability Methods from BASF. Very warm welcome to you, Peter. Kentaro Mizuki, Leader of LCA Utilization and Implementation at Mitsubishi Chemical Corporation. Mitsuki-san, welcome to you as well. And Dr. Verena Bubak, Head of Supply Decarbonization from Merck. So please join me in welcoming this excellent panel. And I maybe to start off, I would ask each one of these panelists to just briefly introduce yourself and to tell us and the audience out there whether you're hopeful that the Scope 3 challenge can be resolved. So maybe ladies first. Verena, let's start with you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm really truly excited to be here. I've been part of the TfS team around the greenhouse gas emissions now for almost 2 years, and it's so exciting to really see this milestone achieved. And I'm happy to also be invited here to share a few of my thoughts and my learnings from the past 2 years. At Merck, I'm heading our supply decarbonization program, and also with TfS, I'm one of the co-chairs in the greenhouse gas workstream, mainly focusing on supply engagement around the greenhouse gas emissions. So I think this guideline that the team has put together at TfS and in the many collaborations that you've mentioned, both you, Anna, and Bertrand, is absolutely a critical achievement, but it's even more important not only to have it, but to use it. So it will be absolutely critical how we roll it out, how we use it in our corporations, and share with suppliers, with customers, with peers. So that will be absolutely relevant to really bring it to scale and drive our industry forward. And then I think Bertrand's vision is absolutely realistic and achievable.
Thank you so much, Verena. Kentaro-san, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Anna. Yeah, I'm Kentaro Mizuki, leading the LCA implementation and utilization in Mitsubishi Chemical Corporation, based in Japan, as well as the expansion to group companies worldwide. Today, I'd like to address about the perspective from a supplier company using this guideline. And we have been cooperating with TfS, working together on pilot of this guideline and has been exchanging a lot of ideas and thoughts. And today, I'm really grateful that I'm participating on this session. So thanks again, and looking forward to this session. Thanks.
Peter, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me and having me today. My name is Peter Zeiling, working at BASF as Director for Sustainability Methods. So I'm dealing with sustainability since more than 25 years. So it's really an important topic we talk about today. And today it's really an important milestone, as Bertrand mentioned. I was in TfS responsible for the development of the guideline as a co-chair among the other co-chairs of the team. So it was really an honor to do that, and also inspiring collaboration with a lot of member companies and also supplier companies. So we had a longer testing phase, exchanging with them, learning more on their views. And so I hope that we prepared a well-readable and applicable guideline today to reduce the carbon, as Bertrand mentioned. And I think in this sense, we are all in the same boat. We rely on the generic standards, but we made some really specific for the chemical industry. And I'm truly convinced that it's an applicable guideline also for smaller and small and medium-sized enterprises. So with that hope, we want to push that forward, and we see a clear, deductible and identifiable reduction of carbon dioxide in our atmosphere.
Thank you so much for sharing that to the three panelists, and a very warm welcome in this session today. Maybe to sort of to take another little step back, there might be some people on the call here today who don't really know what we're talking about. They've sort of been lost for the last 20 minutes and wondering, why am I here? What does it even mean? So I don't know, Verena, maybe could you just briefly explain what is the product carbon footprint and why is it so important to measure product carbon footprint in the context of Scope 3?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, so basically, anytime anything happens to a chemical, whether it's really the very first step or you manufacture and then you pass it on, you transport it, every time emissions are set free. So what the product carbon footprint is the sum of all of these emissions, and we usually call this a cradle to gate product carbon footprint. So it's the sum of all the emissions that have happened to this material throughout all the transformations in the supply chain and the transport and up to the gate. So, and that is the sum. And now, why is that relevant for me to understand as a corporation? Many companies have set themselves climate targets, and many of them most recently also include scope 3, as you explained earlier. And so it's really interesting for companies to understand how much of their emissions actually comes already with the materials, the raw materials they purchase. And the critical aspect is that the detailed amount of these emissions is not known because not many companies actually report it. So we estimate it using global databases and emission factor estimates. And that's a really good start. But more importantly would be that we really understand what is the actual sum. And so this is why it would be great to receive from our suppliers the details, the actuals. And so every company is also a supplier. So every company benefits from understanding how this can be calculated so that they can pass on the actuals to their customer. And so this will create the actuals transparency in our supply chain. And then it will also be possible to see when there are happening reductions, because if we only estimate, then the actual reductions are not shown. So that's definitely why we need to move from estimations to the real data. And this is why we also need this standard to understand how we can all calculate in the same fashion to ensure that the data are comparable.
And of course, the purchase goods and services make up such a huge component of the category 1 of the corporate standard. So even if you're sort of only looking at the corporate level, you sort of need to go into that granularity. Thank you so much for sharing that. Kentaro-san, maybe from your side, what are some of the opportunities you see in creating more transparency on this data? What's very specifically, maybe from your company, what are you planning to use such data on?
Well, yeah, we want to have the perspective of the entire value chain perspective to discuss with all our partners to reduce the global emission, not only our own scope 1 and 2 emission, but also this scope 3 data will provide us a concrete material for discussion, and also maybe having a mutual target setting, which will also lead to a actual driver cooperation with our value chain partners. So I think that is a pretty key of utilizing this data. And
Peter, I know that BASF has started sort of to footprinting its products. Why? What is it? What's in it for you as an organization?
Yeah, we started with a carbon dioxide reduction strategy some years ago. And if you want to follow your strategy, and if you want to find levers to reduce your carbon dioxide emissions, you need clarity and transparency. And that was the starting point for us to generate carbon footprints for all our products and to find where are big levers and where probably are levers not so high. The key aspect is for sure also all the materials that we supply, because that has a significant contribution to the carbon footprint, and their high quality data help us to generate carbon footprints as well on the high quality data. To take that as a management approach, also to reduce that, to interact with our suppliers, later on also with our customers for sure, because we all want together reduce carbon dioxide, but in a meaningful way and in a way that our chemistry supports the carbon dioxide reduction. That's a key aspect, because with our products, with our industry, we are a contributor of carbon dioxide reduction, but we have also levers to reduce our own footprints. And that was the reason to automate that, because you have an overview of all our products and you have a short timing that you have an updated version of all your figures. And that's a key aspect. And with high quality data of our suppliers, all these together, we will have a meaningful and high quality cradle to gate PCF data. And that was also intended here in the guideline to give guidance how to do that, how to come together, how to compare data, so make it comparable at the end and have a high level of transparency and calculation aspects.
So if I sort of hear you correctly, this is the guidance for your suppliers of all sizes. I think you mentioned earlier the word SMEs. Could you maybe share a little bit more in terms of who should be using this guidance? I think the why has come out quite clearly from all three of you. Peter, maybe back to you.
Yeah, the who is for me quite clear. So we prepared the guideline for the chemical industry. So we are focusing on the chemicals. And you know, you in WBCSD, you have a more generic approach on the pact, which is quite helpful and where we think we can have a drop-in solution if it comes for chemicals. And that is based on generic standards. But you know, if you start with generic standards, and I'm also chair of an ISO subcommittee developing ISO standards, they're very helpful. They're a good foundation for that. But in chemicals, in specific situations, you need more guidance because you cannot handle that in a generic standard. And that is the idea of the guideline, to give more guidance, be it a bigger or a smaller company. It should enable you and make your life easier when you calculate carbon footprints. It should be clear which decisions should be made in the calculation approach, because LCA, life cycle assessment, is an assessment. So you make decisions, you you bring in different ideas, you have decisions along the whole value chain, and that should be supported by this guideline. And I'm pretty convinced that also smaller companies can benefit from that. What is quite clear, we need more expertise in there. So we see that all over, that the number of experts are too low for today. So we need to educate people more. We need to interact with them. We need to give them support how to make it. And then we all together, we can create good and meaningful, high quality PCF data.
Maybe just to add on that, I think what's especially unique about this guideline is also the target group. So overall, it's the chemical industry or any industry that uses chemicals, to even widen that scope a little bit. But what I think what's unique is that it's actually targeting at least two, let's say, functions or organization within a company. So on the one hand side, there is the chapter 5 that explains how to calculate a product carbon footprint. That may be relevant then to understand your own products. Maybe your customers will be interested to receive that data. But then there is also chapter 4 explaining how you would integrate received carbon footprints into your own corporate reporting, and that may be a very different department in your organization. So it's I'm not aware that any other guidance has really those two angles captured in one guidance. So and that tailored specifically to chemicals makes the guideline even more specific to us and met the needs that we had.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point to highlight there, Verena. And I see we're sort of having some questions come in. You know, sort of what are the different levels of guidance? You know, you have sort of the industry agnostic bits. Then we have this chemical industry focus, the guidance that is being launched today, and then of course the EPDs and more product level guidance, which sort of is even more granular. And of course in the chemical industry, there's many products, but this sort of harmonization on even the sectorial level is hugely important, and it's something which sort of has been long coming. And I mean, we see this in other sectors as well. But I think it's great, as I said in my introduction, to see the leadership in that space. We're sort of coming up to the end of the first part almost. So I see there's some sort of questions coming, and I'll get to some questions in a minute. Maybe let's sort of start with an easy one. The technology tool was mentioned earlier. So the dying question is, when can we have access to the new tool for sharing chemical industry data across the value chain, and sort of where is it available? You know, I don't know. Maybe one of you wants to sort of share a little bit more detail on the tech side.
Yeah, probably I will try to start, and probably Verena might add. So the tool is under development. So we made really good progress on this data exchange tool. So also we needed to define what needs to be exchanged via this platform, because it's not just one figure. There are some more additional information that helps to identify the right information. So that is all done so far. Now the technical start was given, and there's a testing phase. It most likely will be available next year. I don't know exactly when, but beginning of the next year, there will be more clarity on this. And so one of our work packages work intensively on that.
But more importantly, we can only share high quality data. So we need to use the guideline first and make sure that the data that we share is calculated according to agreed standards. So otherwise, just sharing data is not the intention, obviously.
Yeah, I think it's a great point. That we sometimes sort of colloquially in our teams say garbage in, garbage out. But I think essentially that's what it is, right? If you don't have good quality data, and it comes back to what you were saying, Verena, also on having primary data versus secondary data. Of course, moving to as much primary data as possible, and it is a journey. But moving in that direction is definitely the thing that needs to happen to create much more actionable data and insights across organizations. Maybe one sort of follow-up question in that context. You spoke about sort of the tool coming out next year, and that it sort of has to cover different bits of information. What about beyond carbon? I think this question came up in the chat. Is there a plan to sort of look at other areas, or is it sort of, you've dealt with this carbon piece first and it's hugely complex, sort of what are the next steps there?
I think we see a lot of challenges around us beyond carbon. So we are so far happy to cover carbon dioxide emissions because it's the most significant impact category. Also the Climate Paris Agreement, the COP, and you see that everywhere, that this is really a burning issue, and we need to handle that. We see also in Europe with the PEF, product environmental footprint, there are new upcoming topics. There are several of them. We will see in TfS if we can react on that. So there's no decision so far how to do that, but we will definitely observe that, and I'm pretty sure that the steering committee will have ideas and move it in that direction, that TfS will be as well here the leader in the industry, and for sure also for the chemicals industry.
I can echo that, and definitely what we can share today, and maybe known, it's not a secret. So we have also launched the TfS Academy, where the member companies and their suppliers have free access to a lot of trainings, training modules, resource materials, and that covers the broad range of sustainability topics. So it's not limited to carbon at all. We have, of course, added specific modules on decarbonization that we found relevant. Some of them we've even created ourselves in our work stream, but they cover much more, and it's clear there's already topics on the horizon around circular economy needs to be ramped up. Water is being a topic to consider more and more in the future. So definitely that's progressing, and there's already some material. We just don't have a specific work stream like we have on the greenhouse gas emissions launched yet.
Yeah, and I think we're going to come a little bit more to the question of sort of implementation and what's needed to roll out this guidance and start calculating more consistent data. Maybe just one more question, maybe, or one or two more questions from the chat. And I think we've had a question which I find quite interesting. What about the downstream bit? What about cradle to grave? I think we spoke about gate to gate and cradle to gate and cradle to grave, these sort of terms where they kind of define which part of the value chain you're looking at, and the cradle to grave bit really sort of everything which sits downstream. So does this guidance, Kentaro-san, does this guidance cover that, or is there something that still needs to be done in the future?
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, actually, as a supplier in the upper stream, we aim to provide really good PCF data, and definitely this TfS guideline will help us to provide more data. And at the same time, we would like to have the mutual exchange of information and discussion with our downstream suppliers, downstream players. And as a member of one of the player in the value chain, we want to provide a better product and also do some R&D investment, and we want to contribute to the entire value chain. And the information coming back from the downstream is also essential for us to create a better world. So that is the perspective that I have.
Yeah, I think it's a very good piece of information. Sort of the that it's actually the whole holistic picture, which helps. But of course, making some progress on certain parts of it already is hugely important and provides a big opportunity. I see the questions are coming in hard and fast, but I'd like to sort of move us over to the second part around kind of moving from sort of talking about a little bit of the content of the guidance to sort of how you actually then put it in practice. Maybe I don't know, Rina, you could sort of start to walk us through, sort of, I'm a company in the chemical sector, maybe I'm a TfS member, maybe I'm not. I really think, this is for me. I want to be calculating my product carbon footprint. How do I start? Where do I start? What do I do? Maybe just walk us through that journey.
Yes, it definitely does not matter whether you're a TfS member or not. The guideline is open source, so everybody's free to download it from the TfS website and start using. So definitely, it's one thing to so first of all, you have to have your data straight, right? So it will be very critical when you read the guideline that you understand what is the data that you need for your calculations, and if you have that expertise in house. And as Peter mentioned, many companies don't, right? So that's totally okay. You can consult. You can also reach out to TfS and ask some more questions for support. And there's also many experts, consultants that will help you get started if that's really the topic, and then you can further build the capacities in your organization. So first of all, you have to have understanding about the data that you need, have access to that data, and then decide maybe with a pilot, just select a few chemicals that you want to start working on and use the guideline. Maybe a frequent trigger is that maybe one of your customers is interested in the product carbon footprints for a specific product that you sell to them, right? So that could be a good starting point, that then you do the calculation and there's immediate also business value add for these calculations. Rather, otherwise you can just select some of your products that for you make the most sense to understand the emissions that are associated with that product. Yeah, and then so you have to find the right people, you have to find the data, and then start using the guideline. Peter, you've done that for so many chemicals. What was the next steps, or what were the challenges maybe that you further faced with this?
Yeah, so I think the challenges often are decisions in a life cycle assessment, and to support that, we have a kind of a pathfinder in there to see, okay, what is your situation? So we ask, what is your product? Goes in this or in that direction. Then you find the chapters in the guideline that you should focus on, and that helps you also not reading the whole guidelines from one to the last page, but probably focus on some of the aspects which are unclear for you. And for sure, also exercising training would be helpful on some very good data that you know by yourself. Try to start to come up with a carbon footprint calculation. In principle, with a simple let's say Excel spreadsheet, you can really start to calculate carbon footprints. It's not so complicated. If you want to scale it up, for sure you need to have some other software, but just start with simple examples, see if the guideline helps, see if you have all the background data that you need, and if not, see where you can get it from. So it's an iterative process as the whole LCA is, and so I would recommend to start on this level and to work on detailed and concrete cases.
I really like that that sort of notion of just get started and sort of trial and error and a little bit of piloting. I think perfect is often the sort of the blocker to progress, and I think this guidance in this general space, Scope 3 product carbon footprinting is definitely not the place where we need to wait for perfect, but you need to just get going. Kentaro-san, maybe sort of coming from the chemical supplier perspective, what are some of the learnings that you've had in applying the guidance? How difficult did you find it to get started? How far on your journey are you? And sort of how is it also sort of to experience the customer request to give that information?
Yeah, thanks so much. Yeah, so far, I think a lot of companies has tried to provide PCF by their kind of a own methodology and also the way of disclosure. Each company has tried to do it in their own way, but I'm really feeling and expecting TfS guideline to become a kind of a pillar that, for example, country-based or regional-based guideline can align and merge together so that each player in the value chain can benefit from this in providing the PCF data in more accuracy in a more aligned manner. And I think there can be a little difference among each region by region. Like if we think about the analogy of like accounting standard, there are always some little differences, but I'm feeling that TfS guideline has the capability to, incorporate all those guidelines in the field, not exclusive, but more like a, no one left behind, so that every player in the field can benefit from this, stream. And also, I think that,
sorry.
yes, please. Yeah, and
No,
also
I was going to ask sort of, what. Sorry, I was just going to ask sort of, what incentivized you to start using the guidance? What sort of was it one of your sort of somebody else saying do it? Was it sort of an internal drive to do that?
Well, yeah, it's both ways, and we also had a impression that we would need the kind of aligned guideline so that all players globally can benefit from having a mutual the single guideline. And also from the outer, customers and suppliers, we also think that, for example, in Japan, there is also a movement trying to establish a guideline, but we don't want this to become a, closed guideline, but want it to align with the global trend. And in this perspective, we think that TfS guideline will be the pillar of this trend. And
Thank
also,
you so much.
yeah, and also I would like to add that we don't have time or we can't spend years to train people to calculate PCF, including mid to small customers. And simplicity in a good meaning, I think TfS guideline has a capability for every players to benefit from learning and become capable of a PCF calculation.
Yeah, I think that's a really good highlight there. And I think there's a question in the chat around sort of, how small, medium enterprises with not a lot of resources can kind of sort of get started in this space. So I guess, Verena, maybe turning to you, sort of two questions, how can they get started? What is your advice to sort of the SMEs out there, how to approach the topic? And maybe then also taking a little bit more the sort of internal big corporate lens, how do you get buy-in, or how do you sort of make sure that you have the internal support to get started?
I'll start with the second question. I think it really starts, as always, you need your management support. That's totally clear. Of course, you can work with the people that you know to prepare everything. But in the end, it's always when you really want to drive something, you need management support, and you need your management to understand what's the business value add or any other value. It doesn't always need to be business, but it can also be a reputational benefit. But there needs to be a benefit, and then we need to also make sure that any progress we want to drive is closely aligned and integrated into processes, especially the bigger the company, the more processes. So also sustainability and these kind of calculations need to be then built into our daily operations, basically. So the way it has worked for us is it really became clear when we had our sustainability strategy. We clearly had climate targets. We've had our climate targets validated by the Science Based Target Initiative. So from this, it really all derived and said, what do we need to progress? What do we need to measure emission reductions ideally year by year. They should be reduced. And what do we need in terms of techniques, tools, capabilities internally? And our management is really supporting this. And when we talk about PCF, there's two angles to it. So on the one hand side, we have the customer increasing requests that they want us to provide the PCF data along with our products, and we want to be that transparent. So we're building those capabilities internally with management support, and they want to really make sure we will meet our customers' needs here to be transparent also about the emissions of our products. And looking at that angle around the emission reductions, as I said earlier, if we stick to estimations and using the secondary data, we will not be able to show reductions year by year, because even though many suppliers will be taking measures to reduce emissions, maybe purchase greener electricity or whatever, the emissions that they're actually no longer emitting are not on paper, right? So we don't know, because we may not stick or we stick to these global database emission factors and we don't get the primary data. So here it was really clear also from the management perspective that also in receiving product level information, we need to invest and we need to build the capabilities and work with our suppliers. So that kind of brings me to the second question. Early on, we've already shared when we launched our supply decarbonization program with our suppliers about this ambition that we want to receive from them in the near future product level emission data, and we fully understand that the level of maturity varies. Now that's absolutely understood, but as Kentaro-san said, it's critical that we get started, and it really is possible with our guideline. Peter said it on a small Excel. It's possible, and definitely something that also smaller companies should start doing, because this is really the future, and we will need to come to more transparency about the emissions that are associated with our products, because only when we have that transparency, as Peter said earlier, then we find the levers, and then we can understand how we can make our products better, where to put the money for innovation, and all of that adds to the business case around sustainability. So I think it's absolutely valuable for a company of any size, and just get started and see where is the most benefit for them to start. Definitely you don't start with your whole portfolio, but either you find a customer that's very interested, or you look at one of your most promising products. But that's really how I would roll it out, and start communicating about it, talk to peers, customers, suppliers, make sure everybody's aware, because also as Peter said earlier, collecting that data, building that capability may need some time. It really depends on the data that you already have available or not yet have available, but potentially you'll need some time to get started. So the earlier we all familiarize with these new requirements and what it takes, the earlier we can start preparing and getting ready then to calculate and to share the data.
I think it's a really important point there that you make, sort of also around the collaboration aspect of it, and that sort of, you can't create transparency without your supply chain, and your suppliers or your off-takers can't create transparency without you. So in a way, it's not a it's a game where everyone wins if everyone participates, and everyone loses if people don't participate. So I think that's a really great point to kind of bring into the discussion. And I think that's also in terms of how the guidance was developed, obviously working together with us at WBCSD, but also building on what's already out there, taking the greenhouse gas protocol, taking the ISO standards, taking the Pathfinder framework, and really sort of building on top and making the guidance in this industry very specific to the challenges of the industry, whilst ensuring the alignment. I think those are some of the real key things in enabling all the different players to come together in this space successfully. Maybe Peter, you'd like to share a little bit more, sort of in from your perspective, the collaboration, and maybe you can give some insights into how we've worked together on this in the past. What role do you think collaboration plays in making this happen? And how do you sort of go about making that collaboration work?
And so I think collaboration is a key aspect, and if you have problems in general aspects, you can discuss it in different forum, or you can also collaborate on this. I also know that some associations work together to create data, so that's also for me, a meaningful way forward if you have product groups or so, if you create data on this, see how accurate these data are, and these can also be used in databases. So collaboration can have a lot of aspects, and they can have also discussion on some topics. Let's say we discuss recycling opportunities. We have also on the guideline several options that we offer there, and where also we can initiate discussion. We also want to receive feedback to make it better at the end, because some aspects are not always clear, and that comes much more clear if you discuss it, if you have an interaction between experts or also non-experts. We see also a big or a significant importance of the so-called PCR, product category rules, so that companies come together, stakeholders come together and set really specific rules based on the guideline. That is something sometimes also needed to get even one level deeper, but that helps to understand each other, that helps to understand and accept. I think that's also a key aspect, the carbon footprint calculations. And last but not least, also to accept the scope 3.1 calculation, but also other scopes of the greenhouse gas protocol. So collaboration is key. And also Verena mentioned our academy. That's also for me a platform where we can exchange, collaborate, ask questions, things like that. So I see that as a vital aspect really in the near future, that we in our industry come together, we find good solutions, and at the end, we have also good results, meaningful results, and we can show also that we significantly reduced our greenhouse gases. That's the final goal.
I feel very sort of hopeful when I listen to everything you're saying in the discussion, and you know, it's really interesting to see the progress that's been made. Maybe what are some of the, I guess, challenges which still exist? You know, what still needs to happen to really sort of move to the next phase? And don't get me wrong, I think this is great progress, but I also sort of want us to, you know, to make sure we don't just paint this rosy world, and that we acknowledge the fact that there is still hard work to be done. Kentaro-san, maybe sort of over to you on that one.
Yeah, so the challenge might be, maybe I'm going into a little detail, but there might be a difference in the emission factor from region to region differences, and that might be one of the challenges that we should align in the future. And that's a little, you know, detailed point. But also, I think as I try to expand the capability in our company, the education is really the key, and not only our generation, but also for the younger generation. So I think the education alignment with academics, and also even more so on the high school education, that this education for environment sustainability might be also another factor that I'm feeling.
And I'm sure there's nobody sitting at school saying, "I'd like to be an LCA expert when I grow up." Maybe Peter, you and Kentaro felt that way.
Sorry to interrupt you. So I just wanted to support Kentaro on this, and because I'm teaching at the university in Dresden, and so I see really a development that more and more young people are interested in the topic of sustainability, that they really want to contribute, that they want to learn. When I started my work at the university there, I had around 25 students thinking about sustainability. Today, every semester, I have around 150 students. And so that shows really there's a development. It needs some time, but I'm really convinced that the next generation or the younger generation have a radar of that, are interested in that, and will have capabilities to do so. So today everyone learns mathematics, and I'm pretty sure in 20 years everyone knows something about the carbon footprint, or probably even earlier.
Well, Peter, that gives me a lot of hope.
Sometimes.
That gives me a lot of hope, because I really think one of the key challenges is really scaling also our solutions. So I think that's something I said at the very beginning. It's phenomenal that we now have that guidance, but we really need to make sure it's widely applicable to all kinds of chemicals and really used by all kinds of players in our industry to really leverage and maximize the benefits that we have now accessible to us.
The CEO of WBCSD always says, one day carbon accountants will rule the world. And I sort of think that's very true. It's a very true reflection of the direction we're going into. But of course, where are all those carbon accountants, right? So I think there's definitely a big need to educate, to get people sort of to upskill, but also to find simple ways, especially for some more medium enterprises, to be able to deal with these challenges without having to re-educate their staff and put in place crazy systems to do this carbon accounting. Before we sort of maybe wrap up the discussion, because we're already coming to the top of the hour, maybe just sort of one last question, and I'll sort of pose this as an open question to everyone, and if you feel you'd like to answer this, please do so. One of the questions in the chat is sort of around prioritization within organizations. Companies are definitely stretched. There's lots of things going on at the moment. In Europe, we often talk about the cost of living crisis and others. So, why should companies start calculating their product carbon footprints when they're trying to make ends meet? What is the sort of, what's the rationale behind it?
Yeah, so greenhouse gases and carbon footprints are really a challenge of today, but it's invisible. So that's, I think, the key problem. We see it every day that climate changes, but we think it's not so bad if it's a little bit warmer. But I think we don't see really the significance for all our life, and that is a key aspect. And we should acknowledge that. We should see that. And what is all the money that we can earn against if we have no living conditions anymore on Earth? So I think we see a development there, but it's a vital aspect of our industry, but of all our societies, to be aware of that and to fight against it and to have strategies against it. And that must be much more clear and should be much more highlighted, because it's also an economic aspect at the end, because also renewable energy supply needs some investments, things like that. So we need a holistic strategy on that, but we need to acknowledge that it's a really big challenge for our whole society around the world. So it's a global aspect. It's not a local aspect.
It's a bit like we often face the decision, do we spend our time on the urgent topics or on the important topics that are maybe more strategic? And I really think, I think everybody understands, if we only firefight and have no time for these strategic topics where we would say, PCF now in my analogy is the strategic one, then we will not get anywhere. So with all the urgency that's there, with all the burning questions we need to find solutions to, we still need to make time for the topics, as Peter said, that will become urgent, and then they will become urgent at a point where we have no time to firefight, where we have no time to find a good solution. So I think that's exactly that sense of urgency we need to create for ourselves, to understand now is the time where, and it's still already quite urgent if we think of the climate science, now is the time where we still have some chance to get going and to find solutions. So we should really, despite all the, and I work in procurement, so I'm fully aware of how pressing the geopolitical changes have even made our jobs. But it's absolutely critical that we now start and make some time to tackle also the greenhouse gas emission solutions, especially since we have ideas what they could look like, and reserve some resources to really focus on those and progress.
And I'd like to sort of remind you of the statistic I gave up earlier in the in my introduction around sort of the impact potential this work can have, and it's this sort of short-termism versus long-termism, but sort of not accounting for the fact that there's a significant risk to sort of upside and finances as well if these long-term topics aren't dealt with today, because before we know it, it's going to be too late, and climate change is likely to hit every single one of you out there. Kentaro, maybe sort of you'd like to share some final words, because Peter and Vera, I think, shared some really good insights to close off the conversation. Anything you'd like to add, or maybe sort of one key takeaway you'd like our audience to leave with today?
Yeah, thanks so much. So the earlier you calculate the PCF, the earlier you understand your strengths and weaknesses, and also it gives you a chance to transition yourself and also the world. So yeah, in this perspective, we should really, put high priority and calculation and get ourselves to transition to a better world. So that is my takeaway and message to our attendees today. Thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's a perfect ending to the panel today. We're nearing the end of time. Thank you so much to the three of you for joining us and for sharing a little bit more on the guidance. We've had a lot of questions in the chat, so if your question hasn't been unanswered, sorry, we've run out of time. But I'm sure the organisers of today's session would love for you to follow up with them, or the team will sort of make sure that they make a note of some of these questions and maybe in a roundup manage to address them. I think one thing I'd like to kind of leave you with is that don't worry. There is collaboration with all the initiatives out there, with all the different industries out there. We're really trying to drive this dialogue across industries, across organizations, across types of companies. You know, I think TfS and WBCSD sort of, for us, it's and I'm obviously speaking on TfS's behalf, but I think it's very clear from our collaboration to me how much we believe in this joined up approach. And so sort of with, in light of that, I would strongly encourage you to go and check out the guidelines, download them, read them, check out the Academy, ask questions, you know, reach out to the speakers here today. I'm sure you guys don't mind if I say that, and reach out to us at WBCSD as well. If you'd like to understand a little bit more on the work we're doing in PACT, you can visit the TfS website. There's lots of information there. And you can also visit www.carbontransparency.com, which is the WBCSD website on this topic. And hopefully that'll help you kind of moving from, you know, starting to be interested in this topic, or maybe you're already along this journey, but it'll really help move you towards creating more consistency of data, sharing that data along your value chain, and ultimately equipping yourself and your value chain to be able to make very targeted actions towards reduction, towards meeting your targets, but also towards avoiding that risk, that climate risk coming towards us. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Have a lovely afternoon, lovely morning wherever you are. And yeah, see you next time for some more product carbon footprint discussions, and really looking forward to continuing this discussion. Thank you so much TfS for the hosting today, and have a lovely day everyone.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you all.